All right, welcome back, guys, to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're going to get right into our third segment talking about the Columbus Blue Jackets and their new general manager and president of hockey operations that they announced today. Don Waddell has taken over Jarmo Kekalainen's old role with the Columbus Blue Jackets. I would love to put this out before I start talking about the Blue Jackets. I did grow up in Columbus for all my life. Besides the past month I've lived in Columbus. I've been very close to this hockey team for my entire life. They are the reason that I'm going into a life in sports. So I do have to put my biases out there before I start talking about them here. So I do know a lot more about the Blue Jackets than anybody else probably in the world. No, not that. But I do know a lot about the Blue Jackets. So I think I'm very well fit to talk about them, if I do say so myself. They do hire a new general manager and president of hockey operations. It's Don Waddell. Looking at his career, he has a very impressive and very disappointing career up to this point. The highlight of it is winning a Stanley Cup. He has it in his very first year as an assistant general manager in Detroit, where they won the 97-98 Stanley Cup Finals. That was his only season as an assistant general manager in Detroit. And then when the Atlanta Thrashers became an organization, he was named as the first general manager of the Atlanta Thrashers. He served in that role until the Thrashers disbanded in 2009 and 2010 to become the Winnipeg Jets. He was with that organization their entire time. Under a few different roles, he was promoted to team president, but it was a kind of disappointing career in Atlanta. Of course, they are not a team anymore, so take that as you will. Excuse me. But it is a disappointing career in Atlanta, where he really tried to make that organization thrive, and it never did, only making it to the Stanley Cup playoffs only once in 2006 and 2007 when he won the Southeast Division with Atlanta. And then he was announced as a professional scout in 2012 after a couple of years out of the NHL. After that, he does go in 2014. He becomes the president of Gale Force Sports and Entertainment, which is the parent company for the Carolina Hurricanes. And then in 2018, he was named president and general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes, where until today he was serving as the president and general manager of the Hurricanes. Now Eric Tulsky is the one who came in to replace him, who is now the interim general manager for the Carolina Hurricanes, and today he was announced to be president of hockey operations, general manager, and alternate governor for the Columbus Blue Jackets. A lot of titles there. What's going on internally for the Blue Jackets? You had for those of you that don't know, they had to fire Jarmo Kekalainen after another disappointing year. It's been a couple of disappointing years for the Blue Jackets as of late. Jarmo Kekalainen has been a great general manager for the Blue Jackets. He just has not been able to produce in the postseason, and as of late, it's been disappointing, going through 4 straight years now, missing the postseason since their 2021 series win over the Toronto Maple Leafs in that bubble playoffs, where they eventually lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning. That is the last time that we've seen them in the postseason, was that crazy 6 overtime game where we were all begging to go to bed from that one. So it's been a while since the Blue Jackets have been in the postseason. That is why Jarmo Kekalainen doesn't have a job anymore. What the new general manager, Don Waddell, is coming into is a fantastic young core in Columbus. You have a lot of great pieces for the Blue Jackets. The best prospect pool in the NHL from a bunch of different people. Consider it that a bunch of different professional outlets that rank prospect pools have them number one, because of fantastic forwards such as you have Gavin Brindley, Adam Fantilli, Dmitry Voronkov, Yegor Chinnikov, Kirill Marchenko, Cole Sillinger, Alexander Texier. All these guys have been drafted since 2019. A lot of young guys here. Those are just the forwards who are playing in the NHL right now. And then you also have Adam Bachvist, who is 23 years old. Zach Werenski is still 26. Can't believe that guy is still 26. I remember when the Blue Jackets drafted him back in 2015, 8th overall. Ever since then, he has been a key part and now the assistant captain in Columbus. You also have pieces, Kent Johnson, who is finished the season on LTIR. He is expected to be back for next year. He is 21 years old as well, a top 5 pick in 2021. Patrick Laine, who's 26 years old. He is unfortunately in the NHL PA player assistant program. He battled a bunch of mental disorders throughout last year and decided to go into the NHL PA player assistance program. Unfortunately, we didn't see the rest of the year for Patrick Laine, but hoping he can come back, as he is a huge part for the Blue Jackets and such a fantastic player and such an exciting player as well for them. You also have in the system fantastic defensemen from David Jiricek, who was a 6th overall pick in 2022. Denton Mateychuk, their 12th overall pick in 2022. Carson Kuhlman's the 25th overall pick in 2021. Samuel Nazco, Olbjorg Vikholm, Stanislav Svozil, who was playing was playing with Connor Bedard in the WHL for a couple of years. He is now signed to a contract. We've seen him in the NHL a couple of times. Marcus Bjork, who's a great prospect as well for the Blue Jackets. And then on top of that, they still have fantastic forward prospects such as Hunter McCown, who's 21 years old, Michael Picchia, who's 22 years old, Luca Pinelli, who they're very high on, who has signed an entry-level contract for them, Luca Del Belbaluz, who is playing amazing for the Monsters in their Calder Cup run. Amidst all of this, amidst all the shakeup, they are currently in the middle of a Calder Cup run where they are currently in the semifinals for the Calder Cup. And old adage in the NHL is if your team wins a Calder, you're going to see that success in 2 years' time transpire to the NHL, at least going a little bit into a playoff run for them. But you also have prospects like Jordan Dumais, who led the QMJHL in scoring for like 2 years straight, was in that points race with Connor McDavid in his draft year. Jordan Dumais has been very impressive for them. James Malatesta, who got some minutes on the NHL roster to end last season. He played very impressively for them. And on top of all of this, the Blue Jackets have also $23 million in cap space for this offseason. They are in such a fantastic position, and that's what Don Waddell is coming into, being the new general manager, and Poha, president of hockey operations. He is coming into a fantastic core. The players that he needs to re-sign is 5 RFAs, and then you can re-sign Carson Meyer if you want to. Probably not going to. He's 26 years old. Doesn't look like he's an NHL forward. You need to re-sign Kent Johnson. You need to re-sign Yegor Chinnikov, Kirill Marchenko, Cole Sillinger, and Alexander Texier. Those are the players you have to re-sign. You could also potentially re-sign Alexander Nylander, who played very impressively once the Blue Jackets traded for him from the Pittsburgh Penguins in that 1-for-1 swap between Emil Bemstrom and Alexander Wenberg. So a bunch of young forwards is what you need to re-sign. All of these guys are going to be around $2 to $3 million. Not really anybody going for much more. Probably a bunch of bridge contracts while you figure out who is really worth keeping on your team. The only real guys that you're paying a lot of money for is Johnny Gaudreau on an almost $10 million contract that was given to him in the 2022 offseason. He has not really lived up to that contract, but it might not be his to blame because you have a lot of guys around him who have been underperforming, including of those is Patrick Laine making $8.7 million. He is on the NHLPA program right now, so we'll see if that 8.7 is really within the cap space next year, or if he stays in that program. He could definitely need one more year. It seems like that is likely for Patrick Laine right now. We don't really know what's going on with him. It's more of once we get news on Patrick Laine, that's when things will be moving on him. So you also have Zach Werenski making $9.5 million for the next 4 years. He earned that contract. He has been one of the best defensemen in the NHL the last few years. Last year, he broke the Columbus Blue Jackets defensive points record as he finally had a healthy season after missing all of the prior year with an injury. They also have Damon Severson, Ivan Provorov, and Eric Goodbranson all making north of $4 million on the blue line. So they have a lot of faith in those guys. They're going to try to fill the blue line next year with a bunch of their younger guys in David Jiricek, who is definitely ready to be in the NHL next year. Denton Matejchuk might be able to make that step up. Corson Ceulemans could definitely make that step up as well. This Blue Jackets core is going to be ready to compete, and these were the words that were echoed by Don Waddell in his press conference today. He was introduced to the media today and talked about how ready this core could be to contend and how excited he was. There are just the terms that he used was, we need to figure out the loose ends, and once we tie up those loose ends, this team will be rolling. That to me strikes he's gonna make some moves on the with trades, and he's gonna make some signings to get this team to where it needs to be contending. He said if we tie up those loose ends, this rebuild will go by very fast. They might be contending as quick as next year with a bunch of these teams in cap trouble. We talked about how the Carolina Hurricanes could be in cap trouble going forward. We talked about how the New Jersey Devils could be in cap trouble going forward. We talked about how a bunch of these Metro teams could be in a lot of trouble moving forward into this offseason, losing a lot of players. So the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to be one of the main contenders for a lot of these top end free agents, and a bunch of these trade pieces. Where Mitch Marner for the Toronto Maple Leafs has been the biggest name thrown out. Teuvo Teravainen from the Carolina Hurricanes have been thrown out a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see what Don Waddell does in Columbus. The new general manager, he will be there for a while, I would assume, as the Blue Jackets don't move on from guys that fast unless they're their head coach. But that'll wrap it up for the Columbus Blue Jackets and their new general manager and what I expect to see from him. Once again, guys, I am from Columbus, so I do have to admit to my biases immediately talking about this team and talking about what they're going to do. So take that as you will. But once we get back to it after my third break of the night, we'll be talking about the Seattle Kraken and their new head coach, as another team is hiring another piece for their team going into the 2024-2025 season.